Hey, what's going on, guys? If you're looking for your first mechanical watch, or if you're looking to buy a first mechanical watch for someone, I'm going to tell you what I think the very best choice is, and I'm going to also give you a second choice if you want to spend a little bit more money. But you'll see that by the end of this video, I don't know that the extra money for the second watch is as good as the first. So let's roll the intro and then we'll get into it. Welcome back. I appreciate everybody joining me here today. So we're going to do kind of a Seiko Sunday, except that it's Saturday and we're not really talking about Seiko. I mean, kind of we are, but we're not really. We're going to talk about the Orient Ray II, and I'm going to compare it a little bit to the Orient Mako USA 2. And I want to talk about the differences. Either one of these watches would be a great first mechanical watch for someone. Either one of these watches would make a really good, I kind of hate the term beater watch, but I'm going to use it, beater watch, that you could wear every day and not really have to worry about it. First and foremost, though, I'll do a wrist check here. Today I am wearing, hopefully that zooms in, but I'm wearing the SKX 009. All right, so I want to take a minute here and really talk about the history of the Orient Watch Company, and a lot of times I don't think that Orient really gets the respect that it deserves. Orient makes watches everywhere from entry level up to really some decent mid-tier watches, but I'm going to talk about two of the entry watches today. I'm going to focus on the Orient Ray II, and I'm going to compare and contrast it a little bit with the Orient Mako USA 2 by way of comparison. All right, so Orient Watch Company, the history does go back all the way to 1901, and Shigeru Yoshida started a company called Yoshida Watch Shop. And at first what he did was he would import pocket watches into Japan and resell them. And he did that for about 11 years. In 1912, he started making stainless steel cases for wristwatches. So really, that he's early on in the wristwatch craze. Wristwatches really began to come into vogue in the 1910s up to the early 1920s, and then they really took off after that. So in 1934, Yoshida began making his own, producing his own watches, mechanical wristwatches, and he used the name of Toyo Tokai Manufacturing. And his business really took off, and he did really good business up until around the end of World War II. So from 1945 to 1949, his business slowly declined because of the initial conditions in Japan after World War II. And there just wasn't a huge market for wristwatches, and the Japanese people were really going through a second depression in dealing with the sanctions of World War II. Now, for my history buff followers out there or watching this video, that really turned around right around 1950, and Japan had a resurgence. Obviously, we still see it today. So in 1950, the brand was reborn. The watch factory of Yoshida was reborn as Tama Kaiki Watch Manufacturing. And in 1951, after they really started to gain steam, that's the first time we see Orient Watch Company being used as the name. They officially changed their name to Orient Watch Company. So from 1951 until 2001, things rolled along great. They made a lot of watches, mainly for the domestic Japanese market. And in 2001, Orient Watch Company was bought by the Seiko Group. At that point, Seiko had Orient as a standalone subsidiary, and in 2009, the Seiko Epson Corporation fully absorbed Orient as a wholly owned subsidiary of Seiko. And Seiko has been using the Orient brand since then to put out a wide range of watches most of which have in-house calibers, and they're some of the best priced, for the money, bang for your buck watches there are. So I really, at this point, I want to step in and let's take a real deep dive, a close look at the Ray II, a little bit at the Orient Mako USA 2, and talk about why I think the Ray II is the best entry-level watch for anybody who's looking to get in to mechanical watches. All right, so here we have the Orient Ray II on the left, the Mako USA 2 on the right, and the first thing I want to do is really just kind of talk about the differences between the two, and then I'm going to move the Mako out of the way. So the main difference between these two watches is that the Ray II has a mineral crystal while the Mako has a sapphire crystal. That's the biggest difference between the two, and that could be a deal breaker for some people. The mineral crystal is the same mineral crystal that Seiko uses on the SKX, and certainly it is more prone to scratching than the sapphire crystal is. That in and of itself probably would account for about $100 of the price difference between these two watches. The second main difference is that if you look at, this is going to kind of be tough to see here, but if we take a look at the Mako, you can see that the crystal is sits up a bit above the bezel, where on the Mako it is, not only is it sapphire, it's recessed. The other differences are the appearance of the bracelets. As you can see on the Ray, we have the brushed outer and center links with two polished strips in the middle, and of course then on the Mako we just have a solely brushed finish on the bracelet. We also have more solid end links on the Mako than we do on the Ray. The Ray, in my opinion, really doesn't rattle a whole lot more than the Mako does, but there is a difference that you can notice with rattling. Now, I wear my Rolex 16803 quite a bit. It has hollow end links and it rattles way more than either one of these watches do. But then again, that Rolex 16803 is from 1987, and these are both new watches. I will get into this a little bit more in detail when I talk about the Ray by itself. Even though both cases are made of 316L stainless steel, there is a very slight difference in the case diameter. Not really the case diameter. The diameter is the same. The lug width is the same. So the diameter is the same. The lug width is the same. The odd thing about the Mako is that the lug to lug width, so from here to here, it is 1 millimeter bigger, 47 versus 48. In my experience, it doesn't change the way that either of these feel on the wrist. The Mako is a bit heavier because the case is slightly bigger, and the sapphire is slightly, I mean, microns heavier than the hard Lux crystal that you get on the Mako 2. The biggest difference in these two watches, however, is the price. The Mako retails for about $450, although I have seen it on sale at Orient USA for as little as $299, where pretty much the everyday price on the the everyday price on the Ray will run anywhere from $125 to $165 on Amazon, depending on what day you check and what sales Amazon is having. All right, so I'm going to take the Mako out of the equation here, and I want to focus on the Ray. So the differences that I just talked about, for some people the price difference will justify going with the Mako over the Ray. For some people it won't. It really depends on what you're looking for. But for the purposes of my video, I want to talk about really the absolute starter entry level buyer, or someone who you may be looking to buy your first automatic watch for. So this is the Orient Ray II. The reference number is AA02. It does use an FH22 in-house Orient movement. That's the movement reference that you'll see in the United States, in the domestic Japanese market, and sometimes on Amazon you will find domestic market Orients listed. It's the exact same watch, they just list the reference of the movement as F6922 instead of FH22. Same movement, exact same movement. Has a 40-hour power reserve, and it really, Orient says that it is accurate to -15 seconds to +22 seconds a day. Now for a $150 watch, that is amazing. That's really good. I've actually found that I'm running fast about 4 to 5 seconds a day, which is just really, really amazing for a watch of this price. So let's get into the specs of the watch. The case in and of itself is 41.5 millimeters. I'm showing 41.6 on this one, but 41.5 millimeters. The lug to lug should be 47. I'm showing 47 exactly. And then, of course, we take a look at the bracelet lug width, and we are at 22. So those are just basically the dimensions of the case. Even though this is a 41.5 millimeter case width, it really wears more like a 40, at least it seems to me. And I think that's because of the lug to lug width. The case thickness is 13 millimeters. So let's check that. I'm showing 12.9, so 13 millimeters. And of course, this does not have a sapphire crystal. It has a mineral crystal. It's the same mineral that comes on the Seiko 5 models, as well as the now discontinued Seiko SKX models. So when somebody's really looking for their first mechanical watch, I used to really say that the Seiko SKX is a great choice for that. The problem with the Seiko SKX is, number one, it's now been discontinued, so you would have to go with a Seiko 5 Sports model to get the same kind of watch. But the other thing about the Seiko SKX is it is much bigger in diameter and much thicker than the Orient Ray II. The Orient Ray II is a watch that you can pretty much wear all the time with just about anything. It's not too thick that it's going to get stuck on cufflinks, and the size just really is perfect. To me, it wears about the same as my Rolex Submariner 40 millimeter. As I said earlier, the case and the bracelet are made of 316L stainless steel. And I think it's pretty standard for most entry to mid-level watches. When you step up to 904L stainless steel, it does have some additional anti-corrosion properties. It adds manganese in with the stainless steel, but usually when you look at 904, you're looking at higher end watches. The Rolexes are 904. Many of the higher end brands, Breitling, are 904. So 316L is great for a watch at this price. Usually watches in this price range have 904L stainless steel, which has a little less corrosion resistance, but in all reality, stainless steel is stainless steel. So I want to talk real quickly about the movement. It is Orient's in-house FH22 movement, which is a 22 joule movement and a 40-hour power reserve. And as I said, I'm running about 4 to 5 seconds fast a day with this Ray II model. All right, so let's just really talk quickly about the aesthetics of the watch. I really like this watch. It comes in black or blue. Both are great. I've had the black model here. So I want to take a minute and just talk about the aesthetics of this watch. A lot of people buy watches on aesthetics, and this watch is really good in terms of its aesthetics and the way Orient has made this watch look. Starting with the dial, it does have a pretty standard dive dial with round and rectangular markers. This FH22 movement does feature both a day and a date complication, which is nice. I think they've done a good job when they set off the black with the silver in terms of the date and day window. The hands are your pretty standard. We've got a sword hand for both the hour and the minute. Another difference between the Mako and this Ray here is the hands are different, the markers are different, but most importantly is that in my experience, the loom on the Mako is much better than it is here on the Ray. Now the Ray isn't bad at all. The loom is good. I'll throw in a loom shot here, but it's not quite the same as the Mako. I'll put up a comparison photo for you all to see. The Orient logo at the top, I think, is nicely done, and the water-resistant 200 meters there is good. This is a 200-meter water-resistant watch. It is not a diver's 200, and Orient says that it's only suitable for skin diving. So if you're snorkeling, if you're swimming, you're perfectly fine with this watch. It does have a screw-down crown. My only complaint about this watch and Mako watches in general is I'm not a fan of the crown. They're too small. They're kind of hard to work with. But at this price point, I completely understand it, and it does the job. So then if we take a look, we have a silver bezel ring inside. We have a rehaut with the minute markers. They're pretty standard for a dive watch of this nature. And then we do have the aluminum 120 click bezel. I'm going to have to take my glove off to get a grip on it. It's a nice tactile 120 click bezel. It's very stout. There is no real movement in the bezel. It does a really good job in terms of clicking and getting it where you want to. So if you do dive and you do, let me rephrase that. If you're doing skin diving and you want to use that to time your dive time, or if you want to time anything else, that bezel is very, very good. There is a loom pip at 0 or 60, and then of course we have the standard minute markers down to 15, and then the 5-minute markers there. The coin edge is very well done. The sides of the case here are polished. It gives it a really nice appearance. All in all, I think Orient does a great job with all of their watches, but particularly this watch at this price I think is outstanding. The case is solid. The watch feels solid in the hand. It feels heavy. And I think for the price, it's, again, the purpose of this video is, I think this is the best bang for your buck watch on the market today. All right, let's talk about the bracelet for a minute. The bracelet is solid. The end leaks, of course, are hollow, but they don't really move at all, and I don't find that this watch makes much noise at all. It is, again, the 316L stainless steel, and I think Orient did a good job on this bracelet in terms of the difference between the brushed parts of the bracelet and then the two lines here that are polished. It gives it a bit of a sporty look that you don't find on the Mako. Very solid. So we have a double push button deployant clasp. The clasp in and of itself is solid. It feels good. My only gripe with the clasp is that it is pressed instead of milled, but again, at around $150, this is a very well done pressed clasp as opposed to having a milled one. It's solid. It doesn't bend. I don't think I've ever bent one of these. It works well. It feels solid, and certainly with the double deployant push button and the lock, I've never had this thing come unlocked or undone on me. The bottom of the clasp is very simple. It has Orient's logo with Orient written underneath it. The case back is a solid 316L stainless steel case back with the Orient Wave secondary logo there. Interestingly enough, if you look down at the bottom, it doesn't say Orient, it doesn't say Seiko, it says Epson. And as we discussed early on in the video, that's because Orient is a subsidiary of the Seiko Epson Corporation. I think this watch looks really great on the wrist. I will throw up the wrist shot there again, and you can take a look at it. To me, it really wears a lot like a 40 millimeter instead of a 41.5. And again, I think that's due to the smaller lug to lug ratio there. So that's a close look at the Orient Ray II, why I like it, why I think it is the best entry-level watch for anyone. I probably wear this watch 2 or 3 days a week, even though I have some much higher end watches, Breitling's, Rolex, one Patek, which I never wear. But anyway, I wear this watch probably more than any other watch. If anything rivals it, it would be my Rolex 16803, just because I love that mid-80s Rolex and the way it looks. It's to me, it's retro. To me, I love the old stainless steel bezeled Rolexes better than the new ceramic bezel ones, but that certainly is personal preference. You can see here the second hand does have the little red paint around the lume. I think that gives it a nice look. All in all, again, I think this is the absolute best watch that you can get for somebody who's just getting into mechanical watches, or if you're looking for one yourself. All right, guys, so that's just a short video of the Orient Ray and some comparison to the Orient Mako USA 2, and why I think if you're looking for your first mechanical watch, this is the watch to get above any and all other watches. All right, everybody, that's why I think the Orient Ray II is the absolute best mechanical watch for someone who is just starting a mechanical watch collection, or for anybody who has mechanical or automatic watches and they're looking for a great weekend beater watch or an everyday watch that they don't really have to worry about nicking around, banging up, or anything like that. Guys, I appreciate you sticking around till the end of the video. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Let me know your thoughts on number one, Orient in general. Number two, on the differences between the Ray II and the Mako USA 2. Let me know if you all think that it is worth the extra money to upgrade to the Mako instead of getting the Ray. And as always, see you in the next one.